Greetings, fellow scholars of the livestream. I'm Kudakuma from the Cosmo Canyon Observatory, and today we are continuing the analysis of all new elements pertaining to Cloud and Sephiroth in the Final Fantasy VII Remake first installment. We highly recommend that you watch all the previous parts visible on screen before continuing, just so you can receive the full context. You can find the continuously growing playlist in the info card up there. Still here? Fantastic! Strap in and enjoy the next segment of our journey. Caution, spoilers ahead. In the previous chapter, we tried to answer all the questions posed in the very beginning of this analysis, and I hope we succeeded. However, we still have one last thing to discuss, and that's Sephiroth's Endgame, also known as the ending of Final Fantasy VII Remake project and the Final Fantasy VII canon as a whole. We believe it doesn't just end with the same sequence of events as the original story did, defeating Sephiroth and stopping Meteor in the nick of time. The reason for this lies in Remake's nature. It's considered the fifth installment in the compilation by the creators, and thus acts as a sequel to previous games, fully acknowledging their existence. That's why we think it should also end in a way which finally completes the story, giving the final in Final Fantasy at least some meaning, at least in our opinion. So, what could happen instead? How could Final Fantasy VII's story end? To answer that, we'll have to get the groundwork done, as always, so let's get to it! We'll go more deeply into this first point in a future video about the ending, but what happens to Aerith's and Red 13's additional memory after defying destiny? Aerith reacts to Tifa's questions in a way which suggests that she has no idea what comes next. On the other hand, Red 13 lends them his nose for the hunt, instead of proclaiming that he'll only accompany them until they reach Cosmo Canyon. For the story to not derail too much, it would make sense for those two clairvoyants to lose their knowledge of the future gained before escaping the singularity, as a result of rewriting reality, that is. This means that Aerith will not know what's ahead on their journey, and neither would Red 13, which is especially important for his character arc at Cosmo Canyon. However, everyone most likely still remembers all events which led them here, the flashes of their previous future included, meaning they still know more than they did in the original story at that point. Additionally, overcoming new obstacles like the drum and the singularity strengthen their camaraderie, which can still lead to Red 13's changed lines, even with his additional knowledge now missing. Furthermore, when looking at episode Intermission's epilogue, we can safely say that Aerith has lost her additional knowledge of the future, which she repeatedly portrayed in Part 1, at least consciously. After being dropped off by Chocobo Bill and the first drops of rain begin to bathe their clothes, Aerith looks happy about the rain, the complete opposite reaction to what she exhibited in the main game's ending. But then, after being asked by Cloud if she's going to be okay, she confirms, but then grows confused as to why her stomach is suddenly in knots, as if her body and spirit know what happens next, but her mind doesn't. After all, she's still a Cetra and in tune with the planet. It's no stretch to believe that she can feel upcoming events. Even in the original game, she was drawn to places and knew what to do, without knowing specifics. Red 13, however, the only other character with knowledge of the future, stays silent in all scenes. Curious. Comparatively, the other three clearly don't feel anything of the sorts and are in good spirits, especially Barrett.
That's its way of telling you it's hungry.
So are we, Barrett. So are we. Hungry for part 2. Another interpretation could be related to the following scene with Zack, but that's for another time. In any case, could there be more to Aerith's feelings? If this first game in the remake project takes place in the livestream's memory, the whole compilation has already taken place in the real world. If we assume that, even after rewriting and resetting the timeline, all events from the whole compilation of Final Fantasy VII left a significant imprint on the new timeline, Aerith could very well feel it all, or receive glimpses. Sephiroth might also possess more information than before. After all, he's still sitting in the northern crater, connected to the live stream, which gives him an edge over the others in terms of knowledge. I know you probably don't want to hear it, but the lore established in Dirge of Cerberus is very much ingrained into the remake's DNA, just like Advent Children, Before Crisis, and Crisis Core. Chapter 13 made a start with having our characters explore part of Deep Ground, and episode intermission shoves it directly into our faces with identical Deep Ground soldiers and especially Vice's appearance.
And Nero's appearance too, of course.
What else is exclusive to Dirge of Cerberus, which could also make an appearance in Remake? Vincent will now enjoy a much more important role, which also includes Chaos and the Proto-Materia. And what are those connected to? Omega Weapon, the climax of Dirge of Cerberus' story. Keep this in mind for later. Let's try to establish how Remake's story even came to be. In the far future, beyond 500 years after the events of the original game, the planet is about to die. Why over 500 years? The first flash of future memory we see during the fight against Whisper Harbinger shows Red 13 running through a valley with his 2 cubs, which happens 500 years after Final Fantasy VII. If this memory already exists in the livestream, it must have already happened. And since Sephiroth and Jenova were never fully defeated, their corruption would slowly but surely engulf everything. Geostigma as well as the lingering hatred are no more thanks to Aerith's cure. Sephiroth lacks, therefore, connection to the surface, and most likely also to the pure lifestream, and thus Cloud. With Omega Weapon destroyed in Dirge of Cerberus, the planet might not even be able to purify and return the lifestream to the cosmos anymore, and thus just rots away into oblivion. However, Sephiroth seems to have found a way to connect to Cloud's essence once again, and, as a last resort, attempts to change the lifestream's memory, and thus the past, to reshape the future as he always wanted.
And soon, I will create the future.
Eventually, he manages to change those memories enough, manipulate the party into defying fate, and freeing him from his prison, creating a basis for a potential future victory, even if the version we saw of him in the game potentially doesn't exist anymore. With new preconditions in place, he now might be able to pull off what he failed to do before. 3 attempts already failed, with the first one having been extinguished by Cloud 5 years ago, before Sephiroth was even able to set anything into motion. However, this is what led to the second plan in the first place. Sephiroth learned more about the Cetra, Holy, and especially Meteor while traveling the lifestream, which gave him the idea of summoning Meteor to inflict such a great wound to the planet that it has no other choice than sending in all the lifestream to mend the wound, where Sephiroth would be waiting and absorb it all, ascending to godhood, which would allow him to shape the future and life in general. An evolution of that plan involved corrupting the lifestream completely, choking the planet to death, and then use it as his vessel to travel the cosmos and find a new planet to inhabit, like Jenova did before him. Every single plan failed, but those were attempted before Dirge of Cerberus even happened. This led Sephiroth to learn about Omega Weapon, the planet's failsafe. It appears when the planet's existence is at risk. When chaos awakens as a result of a spreading corruption, it returns all life to the planet, prompting Omega Weapon to awaken, which then absorbs the planetary lifestream and returns it to the cosmic one. The planet is then left behind as a dead and empty shell of its former self. In Dirge of Cerberus, Deep Ground abducts thousands of people with uncorrupted souls and kills them in Chaos's stead, to lure Omega Weapon forward by tricking the planet into thinking that its life is in danger. But there's much more to this system. According to the Omega reports found throughout Dirge of Cerberus, we also learn that the planet has a filtration system, which filters out Terra Corrupt, stagnant lifestream, corruption. Those 8 reports represent excerpts of Grimoire Valentine and Lucrezia Crescent's scientific diaries covering their research of Omega and Chaos based on an over 2,000-year-old Cetran scripture. In the last 3 reports, numbers 6 through 8, we learn that the crystal cave within which we found Lucrezia in the original game acts as an overflow reservoir for the stagnant lifestream, also known as Terra Corrupt. It's also where they find the proto-materia, whose purpose is to control chaos and thus prolong the planet's life. It seems to take care of the filtration and thus keep chaos at bay. The same location is also deemed the birthplace of chaos itself, which is why we obtained Vincent's level 4 limit break, Chaos, in this very cave, after speaking to Lucrezia and fighting some battles to kill time. Without the proto-materia, the slowly accumulating Terra Corrupt would eventually trigger Chaos's awakening, which would then return all life to the lifestream and in turn awaken Omega Weapon. The proto-materia itself was created by the planet several millennia ago, presumably as a response to Terra Corrupt entering the lifestream caused by Genova's arrival. What if the planet approached its time and was willing to let chaos loose onto the world? What would that mean exactly? Report number 7 provides us with the answer.
Before Omega begins his journey to the Sea of Stars, Chaos will scourge the world of all things living, sending them back to the livestream, only to be left with the burden of bearing the discarded remains of a dying world.
Chaos does not just kill everything, it also absorbs all impurity, and then stays behind on the barren planet, left alone only to die alone along with the planet, while Omega takes off with the purified lifestream. I know, it's a lot of information to digest, but necessary to understand what Viz proposes Sephiroth's new plan could look like and how the ending of Remake's final part might play out. We already established that the chain of events will most likely remain the same compared to the original. Producer Yoshinari Kitase even confirmed that the rest of Remake will resemble the Final Fantasy VII we know. And much later, after Intergrade's release, former co- and now full director Naoki Hamaguchi and co-director and scenario designer Motomu Toriyama confirmed this again. Therefore, Sephiroth will still manipulate the party and Cloud into retrieving and handing over the Black Materia, break Cloud's sanity, receive the Black Materia, and Cloud will end up in the lifestream. Aerith still needs to summon Holy, while Sephiroth also still needs to summon Meteor, and then suppress Holy. Aerith also still needs to die, so instead of being able to counteract Sephiroth's manipulations, her death would inflame Cloud's hatred and guilt, making him even more manipulable. Details might differ, of course, but the general flow will be retained. But now, Sephiroth has some aces up his sleeve. It's safe to assume that the version of him sitting in the northern crater has gained knowledge through reading the livestream's memories from before the timeline reset. He also finally seems to have realized that he cannot defeat Cloud. Instead, he most likely aims for cooperation in the form of bringing Cloud to become his vessel in the world of the living. Just like he used Kadaj in Advent Children, but then lost against Cloud. His worst and only nemesis and strongest vessel. 2 birds with 1 stone. Another theory also keeps floating around, which proposes that Sephiroth might be after Tifa now, Cloud's biggest and basically only support pillar. This might be hinted at in Sephiroth's additional presentation in the Shinra Building's Visual Entertainment Hall, and his 4 possible lines towards Tifa in the final battle. However, this would considerably alter the story from that point on and go against the writers' and directors' vision of keeping the core of Final Fantasy VII intact. That's why Viz believes that Tifa won't die this time around. But Sephiroth might either attempt to kill and fail, or make Cloud temporarily believe that he did. Anyway, back to Sephiroth's aces, which now also includes a mega weapon, as it most likely exists again due to the reset of the timeline. Another safe assumption we can make is that the stories of Advent Children and Dirge of Cerberus won't happen anymore, and the ending of the remake will also describe the end of the whole compilation. Evidence for this can be found in the game itself, which includes a myriad of nods to the compilation in a way which reframes Remake as the definitive work assimilating the compilation. Moreover, in the Ultimania interview, director Nomura-san confirms that the remake represents the 5th installment of Final Fantasy VII's compilation, and has been planned to be so for a long time. We also know that the famous play Loveless consists of 5 acts, with the 5th act being lost to time, which is why Genesis writes his own interpretation of it. Why is this important? Square Enix distributed pamphlets on their Final Fantasy VII Remake Orchestra Tour in Japan, which luckily have been acquired and translated by our dear Remake community member Audrey. This pamphlet, which effectively represents a Midgar newspaper published by Shinra, also contains very intriguing articles about Loveless. Both are basically a representation of Remake in relation to the original and the fans. I'm not going to read them here, but you can pause the video and do so yourself. When you do, replace Loveless with Final Fantasy VII, Play with Original, Musical with Remake, and Watch with Play. And then you'll know what I'm talking about. While this alone is just a nice parallel to the real world, the fact that they even included those articles does support the theory about Remake representing Loveless Act 5. The line about the ending being different in the musical compared to the play also further points towards Remake ending differently than the original did, and thus bringing the story of Final Fantasy VII to an end. Additionally, the second article talks about an encore shortly after the main piece's debut. This most likely refers to the DLC episode Intermission, which kind of acts as an encore to the first part. With that being said, how could this new ending play out? Before we tackle this last segment of this new behemoth of a mystery surrounding Sephiroth and Cloud, huge thanks to the real Nanaki, who helped Viz formulate the theory I'm about to present to you. Thank you, our dear friend, wherever you currently are. As discussed before, the remake will most likely follow the same story and main chain of events up to the final segment. To bring an end to the overall story of Final Fantasy VII, the ending needs to differ. With all the pieces in place, Sephiroth's goal, his failed attempts, his new plans, the reset of the timeline, and all the concepts established in the compilation, here's how we think the new ending could play out. The party and Sephiroth follow a very similar path right up to the end, as Sephiroth still needs Meteor to crash into the planet, and this time, he will succeed. Wait, what now? We'll go more into the details in a future video, but the gist of it is that the current livestream is basically almost or even fully corrupted, which is why Aerith won't be able to call it for help, even though she's in it. Yes, Sephiroth still needs her to die, as described earlier. Her death is a big motivator for Cloud to stop Sephiroth at all costs, which leads to the showdown in the Whirlwind Maze. Additionally, Aerith is a foil to Sephiroth's manipulations of Cloud, which are necessary to initiate Meteor Fall. Furthermore, even Remake Part 1 contains a hint towards Aerith's certain death. 2 of the future flashes during the Whisper Harbinger battle show Aerith's demise, and in both instances, Cloud visibly suffers from a headache, unlike after the flash depicting his duel with Sephiroth. Moreover, the visions of Aerith praying and her holy materia falling into the pond below and glowing on its floor are a new creation, like Platefall and the reunion at the Whirlwind Maze in Chapter 3. Yes, The scene of Aerith's burial is also lifted from Advent Children, but what's very interesting is that the flashes of a praying Aerith and the holy materia are shown on 3 separate occasions. In Chapter 8 in the church, in Chapter 16 in Shinra's visual entertainment hall, and during the Whisper Harbinger battle. This repetition seems deliberate, and if it means anything, is that Aerith is still going to die. Additionally, herself, as well as Sephiroth, do subtly refer to her fate several times during the game.
You are too weak to save anyone.
All right, but don't think you can rely on me forever, mister. Everyone dies eventually. So we need to make the most of the time we have. To live our lives the way we want to live. Every minute, every moment matters.
Lastly, Meteor is shown 4 times in the game, twice from Midgar's point of view, and twice in a vision of the future. All but the last example are scenes created from scratch for a remake. This also seems to reinforce its existence in the future, no matter what. Which brings us back to Sephiroth succeeding at crashing Meteor into the planet, initiating his true endgame. An endgame alluded to by Aerith's opinion about how Sephiroth aims to save the planet, which was revealed in the Material Ultimania Plus book. The damage caused by Meteor will initiate the planet's Omega Protocol, activating chaos within Vincent. Due to the amount of corruption and death, the proto-materia won't be able to contain chaos anymore, and thus can't prolong the planet's fate any longer. Vincent's chaos form might start killing all remaining life on the planet and purify all corrupted souls, while Omega gathers the pure lifestream filtered through Vincent's proto-materia, preparing for takeoff into the cosmos. Cloud and the others might be able to stop him and bring him back to sanity.
Maybe Genesis swoops in as Minerva's champion to try and hold back Vincent. I'll see myself out.
Anyway, this proposed ending scenario with Omega has strong ties to Vincent's nature and has therefore a big chance in making it into the new narrative. Furthermore, the heavy emphasis on Deep Ground in episode Intermission prepared the stage for the inclusion of even more Dirge of Cerberus lore, of which we're sure there will be much more of, especially with Vincent certainly not being an optional party member anymore. This is also why we believe that Omega Weapon will play a big role in remakes, and thus Sephiroth's endgame. However, Omega only welcomes purified lifestream, as to not corrupt the Cosmic One. And since Sephiroth's essence is still considered corrupt, his spirit needs to break free so he can enter Omega and hijack it from within to fulfill his goal of traveling the cosmos with the lifestream in his control and become the ruler of the new world, his promised land. This is where Cloud comes in. Instead of Jenova, negative lifestream, and the planet, he needs Cloud to become his new vessel to achieve the aforementioned goal. That's why he needs Cloud to become strong-bodied and, at the same time, weak-willed. That's why we have the feeling that Sephiroth will also appear more often in future parts. For example, while Tifa is trying to piece Cloud's mind back together, maybe to plant a seed that will enable future takeovers? If Sephiroth succeeds, he would be able to use Cloud as a pure vessel to enter and control Omega Weapon, just like his father before him used Vice the Immaculate's body in Dirge of Cerberus. It was the same there. Hojo needed Vice to stay pure, to enter and control Omega Weapon. However, this plan was doomed to fail after Nero, being a purely corrupted and stagnant lifestream, joined with Vice. Now, how can Cloud and the others prevent Sephiroth from achieving this goal? It's hard to predict the details, but the main idea is that those final boss gauntlet still happens, but within the negative or stagnant lifestream. Sephiroth needs him to beat Jenova for him. In the end, the same one-on-one confrontation happens between Cloud and Sephiroth at the edge of creation. It's the battle over Cloud's mind. If Sephiroth wins, he'll be able to use Cloud as a vessel. But if Cloud wins this time, Sephiroth will remain in the corrupted part of the life stream, which will be left behind on the empty shell of a planet rotting away. However, thanks to the connection between Cloud and Sephiroth, it might be impossible to get rid of Sephiroth completely, unless Cloud takes countermeasures, of which we can see 3. First, with Aerith already being a part of the livestream, she might be able to sever their connection. Second, Intermission's post-credit scene showing Zack in a weird Bizarro version of reality might allude to him being destined to counter Sephiroth's shenanigans from within the livestream, first alone, then with Aerith. Cloud and the others are then meant to take care of the physical representation of Sephiroth, a double kill if you will, similar to how we defeat the main antagonist in Final Fantasy II. The third and last possibility is the darkest one. Cloud might decide to take on Vincent's burden, become Chaos himself, and thus stay behind on the dying planet with Sephiroth, while the others can escape. It's Chaos's fate after all, to stay behind and eventually fade into oblivion. Is that the choice Cloud has to make in those remaining 7 seconds Sephiroth was talking about at the edge of creation? 7 seconds before Omega Weapon takes off for good? Taking off to a new world, the true promised land, place sought by Shinra, Sephiroth, and the Cetra, which essentially represents the next stage in the cycle of life, on the planet or in the cosmos. Is this what Sephiroth refers to at the edge of creation? The cosmic life stream?
Our world will become a part of it one day, but I will not end,
he says while looking at the bright nebula above, his new world. So that's what it's all about. He wants to travel the cosmos for all eternity and basically become the arbiter and ruler of life itself. And he needs Cloud to achieve this goal. Without Cloud, Sephiroth cannot succeed. So we covered Sephiroth's goal extensively, but what's the goal of our heroes, and by extension, us, the players? In short, basically the same as in the original. We extinguish the corruption of the livestream and the planet by bringing Shinra to its knees, defeating Jenova and eliminating Sephiroth, curing the planet, so to speak. In Remake, the stakes are higher, but it's about eliminating the same corruption and disease, but for good this time. Completely annihilate it, delete it from existence. The planet was ready to die, corrupted, without letting any of that corruption escape to infect the cosmic livestream. But Sephiroth found a way to change and reset the status quo. Now, it's our task to cleanse as much of the corruption as possible so that the pure part of the livestream can escape the planet, while the corrupted part with Jenova's essence stays on the remaining shell to die. Our heroes will then return to the livestream and, transported by the Cosmic Traveler Omega Weapon, be reborn on a new planet, light years away, ready for a new life in whatever form that may be.
So, what about Genesis? You thought I was joking before, right? I wasn't. Take it away, Kuta.
Sure. Genesis might actually make an appearance during this new ending segment. After all, he's Minerva's champion and seals himself in the flooded chamber on his own volition in order to prepare for that day when a crisis threatens the world. Meteor Fall and the Omega Protocol certainly qualify as a world-threatening crisis, but it's unclear on which side he'll be on. Minerva represents the planet's will, which places Genesis on the side of the planet. It's also unclear which form he'll appear in and how he'll look like. Genesis weapon confirmed? What if he's the new Omega weapon? In any case, this analysis is about Sephiroth and not Genesis, so we'll leave it at that. Sorry, peeps. With all of this being said, the probability of this new ending playing out exactly like this is minuscule, but that's not what this theory and prediction is about. It's the concept of how it could play out, the direction, if you will. Our conclusion is based on compilation lore, the precedent set up by the first part and episode intermission, further cementing Dirge of Cerberus lore, as well as setting up Zack's future. The notion of the remake being the 5th compilation entry and thus a sequel also plays into this. The announcement of Ever Crisis even solidifies this idea, as Square Enix wants us to be able to experience the original game and the compilation entries in a singular package. In addition to raking cash, of course. Nomura-san even calls Ever Crisis a chronology of Final Fantasy VII, as if to tell us that this is what everybody needs to play to get up to speed about the old timeline, as the remake won't replace the original story, but expand it. Yes, Ever Crisis uses a megaton of remake assets, but it will still tell the original story, as evidenced by the reactor scene where Cloud hears a voice and doesn't see a feather. Alright, before we finally conclude this gargantuan analysis, let me show you a few interesting bits of possible foreshadowing for the new ending proposed before. Sephiroth needs Cloud's help to defy destiny. This is a big hint towards a new strategy that involves using Cloud to change Sephiroth's current destiny. At the Sector 7 train station, among other places, we can spot graffiti saying, "Use your imagination," and "Shoot for the stars." Theorists, use your imagination. The characters will literally shoot for the stars. Omega Weapon does shoot for the stars in that sense, doesn't it? And then there's this blue creature sitting atop Beagle's stamp in the alleyway right after Cloud beats Sephiroth for the first time. Yes, it appears elsewhere, but this location bears a lot of meaning. It's a blue, feminine-looking creature with the head of a young child sitting on a cloud. It has a star attached to its head, and there's a white rocket taking off placed above it. Furthermore, on the same wall, but closer to where Cloud met Sephiroth, we can spot the head of a blue female with some tentacles framing it, plus yellow stars. This, to me, says that Jenova's head is with Sephiroth, thus the proximity to the previous scene, while the body manipulates Stamp, aka Cloud, saying to shoot for the stars using a white rocket. This white rocket might symbolize Omega Weapon, containing pure or white lifestream. But wait, that blue creature does have a head. Yes, but one of a small child, maybe 5 years of age. It's been 5 years since Jenova lost her head. The yellow stars could also symbolize where that blue creature originally hails from. I think the Jenova vibes are overwhelming at this point. Now, where else do we see that blue alien? It's also seen above another stamped graffiti between train tracks showing the way in Chapter 5, as well as on the vending machine in Wall Market that sells the sauce. Above the stamped graffiti, it seems to stand for a guide to Cloud. But what about the vending machine? That one's not even mandatory to interact with. The answer might be in the visuals of the sauce. In the inventory, it looks like the surface of a body of water looked at from below. And water is usually used in the context of lifestream, pure lifestream, which is returned to the cosmos by Omega Weapon. Penultimate point, why does Red 13 call the scene of him running through the valley 500 years into the future implicitly the bad ending? Because Omega wouldn't exist anymore to return life to the cosmos. Final point, Cloud's decision within those 7 seconds until the end might also have been foreshadowed. You might remember Don Corneo's question to the 3 avalanche kittens before he pulls the lever to send them into the sewers. The player, and by extension Cloud, receives exactly 7 seconds for answering Corneo's question. If you don't select one of the 3 options, the scene continues after those 7 seconds and Chapter 9 ends. Makes you think whether Cloud can really impact the planet's future within those 7 seconds. Could it be impossible to completely avert the end of the world? According to our theory, Omega always leaves the planet. It's just a matter of whether Sephiroth takes over control or is left behind on the planet to rot away into oblivion, becoming a mere fleeting memory. Convinced yet? If not, please tell us about your take on how the remake could end in the comments below, or even on our Discord server. We always welcome interesting discussions. If you enjoyed your time and were able to learn something new, leave a like, subscribe, and select all notifications to not miss out on our future analysis videos. Huge thanks to all of our Patreon supporters. We can't thank you enough for your invaluable contributions. Before I let you go, we would like to express our gratitude to the rest of the Final Fantasy VII Remake community for their contribution to theory crafting or translations, which helped tremendously with refining our understanding of this gigantic mystery box. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey, and we hope to see you again in the next analysis. Stay safe and take care. Kurikuma, signing off.